Rani, can you hear me? You can type it in the chat box if you can.
Who? Subanjan? Okay.
So in the chat box, Rani Madi has put a message that it is not audible. So I'm just testing the audio.
Yeah, but your voice is loud and clear. I can hear you.
Okay. So it must be some network issue in Rani's area, probably.
So we'll start, Subanjan.
Okay.
Subanjan, are you there?
Yes, sir.
I think we'll start the session. Okay, and
Okay.
in the meantime, let the people join also, because again, we have a restriction of the Zoom time, like 40 minutes. So yeah. Anyways.
Okay. So shall I start sharing my screen?
Yes. Okay. 1 second. So good evening to all the participants, and I have seen that our respected Dean Sir, Dr. Arup Kalita, Dean, Faculty of Paramedical Sciences, Assam Downtown University, has also joined. Thank you, sir. And I welcome all the students, participants from Assam Downtown University, and also who have joined from other institutions. And today, again, we are here in this evening with another webinar where we are trying to impart and continue the knowledge and the discussion through these electronic media, through the e-webinars in the COVID scenario. So today amongst us we have Dr. Subhanjan Das. He is presently the Associate Professor, School of Health Sciences, Department of Physiotherapy, Garden City University, Bangalore, Karnataka. So Subhanjan, a hearty welcome and very nice to see you again in the another session. Like you have been to ADTU couple of times and to Guwahati. You have organized and given your workshops. So I think this is not the first time that I'm welcoming you. So it's good to see again you after a couple of years. And since we have shared the same alma mater, it's really happy for me. Like I'm happy that you could spare your time and give us your valuable time. So before I just move on, just a brief introduction of Subhanjan. 1 second. Yeah. So I have to at the same time control many things. That's the reason. Yeah. So Subhanjan Das has been trained in 1 second. The, yeah. Subhanjan Das has trained more than 1,000 physiotherapists in his career and has conducted 50 workshops plus 50 plus workshops across India and Bangladesh under the banner of Physi Life. He has done his BPT, MPT in musculoskeletal and sports Also, he is a certified Mulligan practitioner from certification from New Zealand, certified cupping practitioner, Mackenzie A-level and C-level certified trainer, certified dry needling expert, and he has done a certification from McConnell, Australia. He has an experience of a vast experience. I think from May 18 till present, he is the associate professor, and also he's pursuing his PhD in Garden City University. He was the principal associate professor of Burdwan Institute of Medical and Life Sciences, West Bengal. Also, he was the chief physiotherapist in PhysiLife in March 12, March 9. He was the assistant professor at Gitanjali College of Physiotherapy, Udaipur, Rajasthan. And that previously, he was the vice principal of SPG College of Health Sciences, West Bengal. So as I've said, he has conducted many workshops like dry needling, cupping, taping, myofascial modulation, including the MET, MFR, trigger points, PRT, DN, dry needling, cupping, muscle and energy techniques. So a lot of techniques he has been using and is trying to impart through his workshops, and that I should say that is doing a commendable job. And he's also been a guest speaker on manual and musculoskeletal physiotherapy across various platforms, a guide for MPT sports students, and then also he's been associated with 6 universities across India in various capacities, 6 publications to his name, national and international, received the Best Physiotherapist Teachers Award in PhysioCon 2016, Young Achiever Awards, and many more. So we are really happy, Subhanjan, to welcome you to today's session. And without much delay, I would like to hand over the platform to you. Over to you, Subhanjan.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a nice and elaborate introduction. I have been to EDTU, I think, yes, as you said, couple of times, and the hospitality is awesome. I wish I was there presenting it in person. And I thank the Downtown University for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this. Abhijitda has been a wonderful senior, kind of a friend, philosopher, and guide. Abhijitda have talked about my publications. My first international publication was with collaboration with Abhijitda and EDTU. So I have a lot of things to thank for to Abhijit sir for in a lot of aspects of my professional career, as well as EDTU. And I also am thankful to Garden City University, who has which university is my alma mater, and I'm working there right now. And I got my permission to conduct this this webinar also from Garden City. I am sharing my screen. Can anybody unmute and
Yes, Subhanjan, we can see your screen. Yeah, you can. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah.
Thank you. So basically, the topic is amazing myofascia, a physiological basis of soft tissue techniques. There is always a shift between, say, soft tissue technique as well as articular technique. We grew up learning more of Maitland slides and articular techniques. Then one fine morning we came to know there is something called as myofascial release. I'm talking about my BPT days. And then we came to know there are so many other soft tissue techniques. Then the focus went to soft tissue. Just 4 slides of Maitland and the Kisner Colby textbook. Then again, at one point of time, we came to know there are so many mobilization techniques or manual therapy techniques that is beyond Maitland or other than Maitland. And again, I personally had tried to run around and find out, pick up many techniques, this and that. Then again, it struck that there is something related to soft tissue. And by that time, myofascia came, the understanding of the myofascia came. And the present understanding of the myofascia goes like, myofascia is an amazing structure. I love to compare it with Spider-Man. When we think about myofascia, when we studied anatomy, we studied myofascia in a way that we talked about myo and fascia in two different compartments. We talked about muscles, and we know 40 muscles, and we studied origin and insertion and supply and action and forgot and studied again. And then we studied fascia. Okay, superficial fascia, deep fascia. There our and probably some fibers of fascia. We studied the fascia lata and fascia transversalis and Simpson's fascia. Yeah, multiple fascias in separate compartment. But our focus has always been muscle as a physiotherapist. As our understanding of fascia changes or human body changes, now we see that the fascia and the muscle are inseparable. And here I feel like this analogy of Spider-Man is appropriate. Spider-Man and the web are inseparable. If you take away Spider-Man, the web from the Spider-Man, what happens? Spider-Man becomes a normal person like you and me. There was one picture, one movie, where Tobey Maguire forgot how to cast a web or something. He was very inconfident, and then he was using an elevator. If you remember that Spider-Man 2, I guess. That he became a normal person. Similarly, muscles and fascia are inseparable. Spider-Man is the mobile part, voluntary movement part, and the web is the structure on which he moves. Similarly, the fascia is the immobile structure, seemingly immobile structure, and the muscle is moving on the fascia. But if you take away the fascia from the muscle is just a lump. So they are inseparable. Not only that, the myofascia is a continuous structure. We have always studied that we have the adult human being have 206 bones, and the adult human being has the muscles number changes, from book to book, reference to reference, anatomist to anatomist, but somewhere around 640, 650 muscles. Now, the present understanding says that we have only one muscle in our body, one skeletal muscle in our body, and 650 pockets of fascia. This is what Tom Meyer says, and a bit of exaggeration, but it means that the muscles of the body, of the whole body, is somewhat connected. So the myofascia, muscles and fascia, is a continuous structure, and fascia is everywhere. If you see the first picture, you can see this pink part is the muscle and the white part is the fascia, right? So between the muscles there is fascia. Also, if you cut open a muscle, what do you see? You see the muscle fibers, and then in between you see all these fascial fibers. So between the muscle, within the muscle, there is fascia. Then what is there? If you see the soft tissues, you'll get to see that in the nerve, for example, this picture, we know that neurons, then epineurium, then perineurium, then endoneurium. The fibers, then we say we have epineurium, perineurium, and around the nerve neurons we have endoneurium. What are they? They are the fibers of the fascia, and the neurodynamics concept talks about the mobility of this fascia, and the difference in the mobility of the fascia as well as the neurons create a lot of problems. So fascia is everywhere. And what does the fascia do? Fascia has many important functions. One of the functions of the fascia is it provides contour to the body. Imagine you have a plastic packet of curd. What is the shape of the curd? The shape of the curd is the shape of the plastic packet. Similarly, the shape of the muscles, the shape of the soft tissue of the body is given by the packet, that is the fascia. So it is like a tight body suit around you. You'll be able to appreciate this much better when you think of an amputee. If you have seen an amputee, what happens to his amputated part? Because the sleeve of the fascia is not there, because the tight facial lining is not there, his amputated body part becomes spread like a big cauliflower kind of. Also, some of us have put a lot of curd inside the facial suit. So sometimes we get stretched like this. And we understand, please understand that when you get stretched like this, you have a normal elasticity of the fascia that goes away. So the length tension relationship also comes into place, and that is why people whose fascia is stretched like this, they are not in their optimum health. Of course, there are exceptions, and you'll see people whose fascia are stretched like this, and still they're wonderful athletes. But usually, so the fascia is a bag. You can imagine the fascia as a bag which provides the contour of the body. Then the fascia also transmits the forces. This particular patient was a patient of a degloving injury. So in this patient, if you see, the facial bag has been broken and then replaced by where the noodles are like the muscle fibers. Only the noodles here move voluntarily. And the extracellular fluid is the soup. Now, the sliding of the muscle fiber on the extracellular fluid is what we call as muscle play. Now, this muscle play is dependent upon the health of the muscle as well as the health of the fascia. There is an extracellular fluid. Now, don't get confused. Once I said the fascia is solid like a sleeve. Now I am saying the fascia is liquid like a fluid. Fascia has this dual existence. It's a combination of solid and liquid, something in between. Now, imagine instead of water in this program, the water ballerinas and the fishes were moving on a thick substance. That is, imagine they were moving on condensed milk. How would their movements be? Their movements will be more labored, more energy inefficient. That's what happens when you take away water or fluid from fascia. And that is why when you have dehydration, there are chances of increased muscle injury when you are working your muscles through the dehydration, because the muscle play is not enough. Next, facial fibers also escort blood vessels and nerves. If you see this, it is very easy to understand. The red thing is artery, branches are arterioles, and then it becomes capillary here, then it becomes venules, and then it becomes the vein. And in between, the yellow thing is nerve. So everything is held together in the fabric of fascia. Imagine you have a cotton fabric which is fascia. On that, the thread works are there, stitches are there. Those are the cotton fabric itself is the fascia. The thread works are by the nerve and the blood vessels. Now what happens if the facial fibers are tight? What will happen? What will happen to the circulation? The circulation will be down. No, because the fabric is tight, so the arteries will be compressed, the arterioles will be compressed, the venules will be compressed, the veins will be compressed. So what will happen? There will be less delivery of oxygen, less delivery of glucose, less delivery of hormones and enzymes. There will be less removal of metabolic wastes. And that is why if you can straighten the fabric, to some extent this can be restored. And that is why simple stretching many times gives amazing result, because what you are stretching is not only the muscles but also the fascia, and that restores all these balances. You can call it as homeostasis. So this is another function of fascia. But fascia is not an inert fabric. Fascia has receptors, conscious and unconscious receptors. If you remember this Spider-Man movie, where Spider-Man gets this specific suit and it has a name, This suit is much better because it talks to him. What does it say? What to do, what to feel. Of course, this suit was a negative character, but we also are wearing this suit. Imagine there is a small speck of stone in your shoe. What will happen? Your steps will be different. No, your gait will change. Imagine you are wearing a tight jeans, a stretchable jeans, so that you can do a long lunge. But because of the tightness, what will happen? Normally you walk like this, and with the tight jeans, you will have more pelvis rotation. So it will be more like a catwalk. Happens, no? Happens to all of us. That is because of this conscious and unconscious sensation via the receptors. Our movement change. Our our behaviors change. For example, we all have seen the soft cervical collar or a tape, say a kinesio tape. In both the cases, either the tape or the soft cervical collar does not have enough mechanical strength to correct your position. But still, with a collar or with a tape, your joint position changes. How? Because you are now giving stimulation via the proprioceptor or the exteroceptors, and these stimulations are going to the nervous system, and your nervous system is behaving in a different way, so that your movement changes, your posture changes, your activity changes. So finally, so tension in the myofascia regulates posture. This is understandable, no? My erector spinae in the back of me is contracting, so I'm straight. So tension in the erector spinae, if I allow it to go away, if I do not contract my trunk extensors, I will slouch. So tension in the myofascia regulates the posture. And depends upon your posture, the muscles are working. I talked only about erector spinae, but there are so many other muscles. Virtually all the tonic muscles of the body have a role to play to maintain the position of posture. And that role is how much to contract, which muscle to contract, will be told by the tension receptors in the myofascia. And that is why tension in the myofascia will regulate your posture. And what is movement? Movement is dynamic posture. So tension in the myofascia also regulates movement. If you see this, I'm not sure how many of you have played with a toy like this, where there is a string, nylon string going through the parts of this giraffe. So if you reduce the tension in the nylon string, the giraffe will fall down or the giraffe will move. Similarly, alteration in the tension in the myofascia reduces motion. So tension in the myofascia is responsible for static posture as well as dynamic posture. Tension in the myofascia is responsible for movement and posture. That brings us to the concept of tensegrity. What do you mean by tensegrity? There are two different words put together. One is tension and another is integrity. So tensional integrity is called as tensegrity. Basically, optimum tension in the myofascial chain holds the body in proper form like a tent, and that is tensegrity. If you see this model, there are 6 pencils. If you can count, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6. Now these 6 pencils are actually 3 in 3 cardinal plane. Okay, frontal plane, sagittal plane, coronal plane. 2 pencils in 3 cardinal planes. Now, if you can see this particular structure, none of these pencils are in contact with each other. No, they are all separated, but they are held together not by the compression in the pencils, but by the tension of a single thread, which is connecting all the pencils together. And that is a model of the human body, tensegrity model. The bones here are represented by the pencil. The thread here represents the myofascia. And what do you think will happen if you cut a thread at one place? The whole thing will fall apart because the tension is same throughout the thread. If you have studied pulley in your physics, you will understand this. Whatever is the type of pulley arrangement, the tension in the rope remains same. Similarly, if you cut the thread anywhere, everything will fall apart because a problem at any part is related to problem at another part, and that is the tensegrity model. And in foreign countries, they explain the tensegrity model with the example of a tent, where they say the poles of the tent are representation of the bones of the body. By the way, as you see, in most of the bodily joints, at least mobile joints, the bones do not touch each other. No, bones touch each other in the skull joints, in the composites and all those. But in a synovial joint, the scapula does not really touch the humerus, the bones. In between, what is it? How they are held together is by the capsule, and capsule is a part of the fascia, soft tissue. Similarly, in your knee joint, the tibia doesn't really touch the femur. At times, there is transfer of forces via compression in between, but ultimately, what holds together the tibia and femur is the joint capsule, is the quadriceps tendon, is the synovial lining, and all this. Everything is a part of the fascia. So we may not have seen so many tents, but some of us have seen antenna when we did not have too many cable TVs. So in antenna also same thing happens, So there is a pole which represents the bone, and there are ropes in pulling out from multiple directions, and they represent the fascia or the muscle chains. My example is a little different one. I give the example of a mosquito net. And as you can see, this mosquito net usually is held by poles, in four directions. And then rope goes towards the poles from the mosquito net. And if the tension in all the ropes remain proper, what will happen is the mosquito net will be like this, looking very good, nice, prim and proper. But usually this does not really, mosquito net does not really remain in this position like a proper cube. What usually happens is this kind of thing you can see in advertisements or in movies, in certain specific scenes where the mosquito net is held like this very nicely. But usually what tends to happen is this. If you have stayed in a hostel, you will appreciate this. If you have ever used a mosquito net, one side there is too much of laxity in the rope, another part the rope is too small, so you have pulled. This part, as you can see, this part is very pulled, and here this part is, there is a lot of slack. That's what tends to happen. Now that is what is tension imbalance. So once there is imbalance, say locally here, you will have a global effect, whole body. Now local global, I'll come to it later. But basically, problem at one place can theoretically produce some problem at another place. Okay, and body tract compensatory changes, sometimes affecting more distant body parts. Okay, now let us come back to the example of this mosquito net, Machhardan. What happens when the mosquito net is having too much of laxity? What do? You make a knot and make the mosquito net shorter, the rope shorter. What happens when the length of the rope is inadequate? You bring out one more rope and you make one more knot. Okay, figuratively I'm speaking, these knots in the body are examples of trigger point. Okay, so basically when the muscle is too stretched, It has to put a lot of effort. You can think the rope is very long, so you need to make a knot, and this kind of knots are felt in the body, and that can be called as a trigger point. Similarly, when the muscle is inadequate and you need to put one more muscle into action, a compensatory mechanism, for example, those compensatory mechanism muscles also sometimes come up with this kind of painful focal area of tenderness called as trigger point. Now, the idea of trigger point is not of today. It has been there for a long, long time, and there has been a fair share of controversy on that. But basically, you can visualize those painful points under ultrasound imaging, and you can with appropriate intervention take away those uh, contracted knots. So there is physical evidence, diagnostic evidence of trigger point. Finer details can be discussed, and there can be controversy. So basically, clinically, what you feel is a tight band, taut band, where at one point of at one point you can get maximum amount of tenderness. So focal tender knots, sometimes you palpate them and you feel the specific radiating pattern. So you get pain, referred tenderness, motor dysfunction, and autonomic phenomena. These are four cardinal hallmarks, clinical hallmarks of an active trigger point. And then there are theories of segmental sensitization and suprasegmental sensitization of how trigger point is produced. There's a fair bit of disagreement on this, but trigger point basically remains. So till now, if I summarize where I have come, I have introduced myofascia. What is myofascia? Then I have talked about what is the function of myofascia. Myofascia gives the body shape. Myofascia produces motion. Myofascia produces, maintains posture. Myofascia gives signals or receptors, and based upon these receptors, movement also happens. So summarize factors. So optimum movement or optimum posture needs optimum length tension relationship of the myofascia. Is the gist of what I have told till now. This function. Perform what you need is proper length and proper tension in the myofascia. So what controls the length and tension of the myofascia? There are multiple factors like this catapult. These were Roman people's favorite weapon. So we all also have used the catapult in our childhood. So say if you take the movement of this ball as the movement of this movement of this what is it? Not bullet, but something, the projectile of this catapult as the movement of the body. It depends on how far the projectile will move and in what direction the projectile will move. It depends upon multiple things. First is external forces, for example, gravity, so the weight of this. Then mechanical properties of the myofascia. For example, the stretchability of the spring that is present here, the stretchability of this rope, the tension on this, so all this, and the volition, how far you want to throw, depends on the nervous system. So basically what I want to come is the movement of the body and the posture of the body is controlled by the length tension relationship of the myofascia, and the length tension relationship of the myofascia is dependent upon external forces including gravity, also friction, also some other form of resistance. Second, mechanical properties of myofascia, the stretchability, the coefficient of say expansion, the elasticity, the physical parameters, and also the nervous system, how far you want to contract a muscle. Now from a therapeutic perspective, as a physiotherapist, you can play with these three factors: the mechanical factor, the nervous system, as well as the external forces. As you can play with these three factors, you can improve, optimize the movement pattern, or the move. You can correct the movement pathology, you can correct the posture, working on these three dimensions. So if you take away the mechanical property, because they're more or less constant, as a therapist you can work on the length tension relationship of the myofascia and correct posture, movement, reduce pain from two different dimensions. One is mechanical property or the neural property, by working on the receptors. Okay, now we will discuss the mechanical properties of the myofascia and the neural properties of the myofascia, and we will see a little bit on how do you manipulate with them or modulate them, and that can be, that I call as myofascial modulation. That is using myofascial length tension relationship and the factors that work on this length tension relationship to correct movement, to correct posture, and to reduce pain. So let us come to the mechanical part first. And mechanically, if you see myofascia, there is a macrostructure, there is a microstructure. What do you mean by microstructure? You go under the microscope and you see the myofascia. What do you see? Myofascia, the muscle part we know. Muscle fiber, endomysium, perimysium, epimysium. Then the rest of it, the fascia part, is also called as extracellular matrix, where you have the fibers and you have the ground substances. The fibers are the fibers of the fascia. So this is the solid part, and the ground substances are the liquid part. And the fibers, we talked about the myofascia like a soupy noodle. No? So the fiber part has three types of noodles. You know, if you consider the noodle part, you have three types, that is collagen, elastin, reticulin. Collagen is very strong, has a very nice tensile strength. Imagine it is a steel string, a rod. You cannot really pull it. Your tender Achilles or all the tendons here are mostly collagen. Then you have elastin. Elastin is a stretchable string. You know that they have a longitudinally stretchable stuff. It is stretchable. Say it is a nylon string. You can stretch it. That is elastin. Your joint capsules have a lot of elastin, especially when on the other hand, reticulin is the kind of a fiber which is not always in the straight line. It is a, you can say, a clump of wool. It is the most elastic, and it is always in a lump, in a clump. Our skin has a lot of reticulin fiber, so that you can stretch it anywhere. So depending upon the myofascial structure, the proportion of collagen, elastin, and reticulin varies. There are types of collagen, again you must have studied in your basic biomechanics. In the ground substances, they are in between the fibers, as I said, they on which the muscle play happens and the fiber play happens. So basically they're water, that is the liquid part, and the glycans, glycosaminoglycans. They're sulfated glycosaminoglycans and non-sulfated glycosaminoglycans. So you must have heard about chondroitin sulfate. So this chondroitin may not be the most appropriate American osteoarthritis for American Association, AAOS, American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, have specific recommendations for joint degeneration osteoarthritis. They say that the glucosamines and chondroitins do not work very well, but they are amazing in tendon injuries. So whenever there is deficiency, for example, in tendon injury and all, this kind of supplements work very well. So sulfated part provides cohesiveness in the fascia. That means It holds the fascia together, binds the fascia together. You can imagine a say a thick concentrate of Fevicol where you're putting that Fevicol, the binding force is the sulfated part, and the water in the Fevicol is the non-sulfated part, is holding the water. Now, why to study all this? Why to learn all this? What is the benefit of this? As a physiotherapist, you must understand the importance of water replenishment. Good amount of water means what? Good amount of uh, muscle play. So it is important for all your patient to ask the patient drink water, because our kidneys, as you know, the GFR is 180 liters per day. So at least give 2% back, about 3 to 4 liters. And again, please understand this. Many people get up in the morning and they drink 2 liters of water at the same breath. Not going to help, because your 5-liter blood volume, if you think that the whole 2 liters is going towards your blood, not possible. Then your blood is getting diluted by 40%. So your kidneys will start filtering out extra water. It will go away immediately, and because the hormones take some time to get readjusted, you may end up with lesser water than what you had. So water replenishment should happen throughout the day. Okay, so that is one thing to understand. Patients need to drink water. If you give water, what will happen is the muscle movement will be better. Example of this: dehydration produces muscle injury. Another thing to understand is there is always, because of temperature regulation, there is redistribution of water. So if your patient is sleeping in the AC in the night, the patient can get a muscle cramp in the calf muscle, because even if the patient is getting enough water, to conserve the body heat, the body is channelizing less water to the periphery. That happens. So if your patient gets night cramp in the middle of the night in the calf muscle, ask the patient either to wear a socks or to reduce the AC. One of the reasons. I'm not saying the sole reason. Okay. The other thing is heating. We always have been we have always used heat as a form of therapy. Now, how it helps is, one of the way is it produces expansion of water, and our soft tissue is mostly water. So before stretching the soft tissue, if you can heat up the tissue, there is a chance that you are going to be stretching it with more ease. Okay. And one of the best ways to heat the tissue is basically internally. Whatever superficial heating we do does not really go very deep. So heating has its own place before you want to stretch the myofascia. Next is one property called as thixotrophy. If you remember thixotrophy is a property of a viscoelastic tissue. Our myofascia is a viscoelastic tissue. What is viscoelastic? Very quickly, if you pull a rubber band, it will stretch. If you release, it will go back to its original state. If you pull a clump of putty, it will break. It will not be stretched. Okay. But what happens when you chew a chewing gum and pull? The chewing gum, if you pull it fast and release, it will go back. If you pull it slowly, it will stay deformed. So a viscoelastic tissue is where the rate of deformation defines whether the tissue is going to recoil or the tissue is going to remain in deformed state. Okay. So one of the properties of viscoelastic tissue is thixotrophy. This is also given in the properties of ultrasound gel. Basically, if you add energy to a in a viscoelastic, in a viscous medium, what will happen is there is from semi-solid it will become liquid. On the other hand, if you take away energy from the viscoelastic material, what will happen is from semi-solid it will pipe. And what energy? Mechanical energy. How is it relevant? You are sitting for 2 months since lockdown, and now I think it is 3-4 months. You have not used your muscles, so you have not given any mechanical energy. The muscles are solidified. Suddenly, if you try a kick, if you try to kick a football, what will happen? Your muscle fibers will break. On the other hand, before going to the field, if you do your stretching and warm-ups, what will happen? You are imparting mechanical energy to the viscoelastic tissue. It will be more malleable. It is going to be more stretchable. So always when the same thing happens when we have a fracture, no plaster, the fracture heals, the bone heals on its own, but the muscles become tight because there is very little movement. Mechanical energy has not been given. And finally, supplementation. First thing you need to supplement is water, or the patient, how much of water the patient is drinking. Second, as I said, the chondroitins and glucosamines, all this glucosamine supplement, rejoint, lubrijoint, and all these are the kind of something which I don't call it, are the kind of supplement you give. More than that, I strongly believe, because I'm in Bangalore here, and half of the people are vegetarians, and they have a lot of problem with their B12 down. I'm yet to see in the last 2.5 years in Bangalore, I'm yet to see a person whose vitamin B12 and vitamin D has been checked and it is in the normal level. Of course, I don't prescribe these testings, but people come with these reports, and I'm yet to see a person. And I'm talking about people who are in their 30s, and they have low vitamin C, low vitamin D, and low vitamin B12, and the tests are costly. So blanket request, you can tell them that take food which are rich in vitamin B complex, be in the sunlight half an hour a day. That produces a lot of difference, because B12, as we know, are related to the nerve conduction, and D is related to vitamin like calcium and all this. So reduction in these two levels produces vague kind of pain, or increases the suffering from the simpler pathologies. Next, the macro structure of the fascia. We went into microstructure. Again, we talked about the function of the fascia, how working on the fascia can produce improvement in the movement posture pain. Then we went to the mechanical structure. Mechanical structure we were talking about microstructure. Now come to the macro structure. That is what you can see. As I said in the beginning, the myofascia is a continuous structure from head to toe. Now, if you have difficulty comprehending or believing that, simpler version of this is fascia of a muscle is tendon basically. No? The tendon attaches to a muscle, and the tendon attaches to the bone, and the bone is continuous, and the tendon is continuous with the periosteum, and the periosteum is continuous with another muscle, because in the same bone multiple muscles can be attached, and in this way it forms a chain: muscle, tendon, periosteum, tendon, and the muscle. So that is how the whole body muscles are connected. And if you say Tom Mayer's work, Anatomy Trends, I'm sure you people are familiar with it, but first time when you read it, it is fascinating. He has found out this connection, at least he claims he has dissected and found out these connections, and a lot of it makes actually logical sense. So he calls the first thing a superficial back line, he calls this a superficial front line, lateral lines, and then there are so many other lines. And very quickly, if you see the plantar fascia, the distal attachments are into the plantar plates beyond the metatarsophalangeal joint. The proximal attachment is in the medial plantar tubercle in the calcaneum. But Tom Mayer says that it does not end there. It is continuous with the periosteum of the calcaneum. And the calcaneum periosteum is connected to the tendoachilles. Yes, makes sense. Then tendoachilles is connected to the gastrocnemius muscle here. And the gastrocnemius goes from bottom to up beyond the knee joint. And from top to bottom, two more muscles come. That is the muscles of the hamstring. So semitendinosus, semimembranosus, as well as biceps femoris on the other side. And then it goes to the origin, that is the ischial tuberosity. And from ischial tuberosity to the sacrum, we have got the sacrotuberous ligament. Then what happens is, from sacrum you have the sacrospinalis muscle, also called as rectus spinae. The capitis fibers are here, and here you get the scalp, which is continuous with the occipitofrontalis muscle. So he says your great toe, and this is related, and he gives logic. That is why when there is plantar fasciitis, we give the calf stretching, because the calf and plantar fascia is connected. And that is why when you have a big, thick hamstring to stretch, you hold the great toe and pull, because the great toe and hamstring is connected. So in similar way, there is superficial front line, lateral line, arm lines, spiral lines, functional lines, all this. But the idea of whole body connection is not copyrighted to kinetic chain, or copyrighted to Tom Myers. Myers himself was a student of Ida Rolf. So Rolf talks about blocks, and beyond the structural connections, we always have known about the functional connection, something called as kinetic chain. And this actually is very straightforwardly found with electromyography. That is, when you do a right shoulder flexion in standing, there is deactivation of the left soleus muscle, there is activation of the right TFL and the rectus femoris, and then you see the activation of the left semitendinosus, that is the hamstring, and glutes, that is the hip extensor, and finally the activation of right erector muscle, erector spinae muscle. After that only you see activity of the deltoid. So there is structural connection, and then there is functional connection of the whole body, which again emphasizes on the connection of the whole body. Like we know heart muscles, they work as a syncytium. If some part of the heart starts to work out of the focus or out of the coordination, starts to contract alone, then there is problem with the rhythm of the heart. Similarly, our human body rhythm also goes away when there is structural or functional disintegration. One of the example is, you must have seen this in the Facebook video, that is Bruce Lee's 1-inch punch. So this guy who is not Bruce Lee is punching this person, nothing is happening. On the other hand, this guy who is Bruce Lee, he is taking just a 1-inch difference here, and then he is punching this person, and the person gets such a hard punch that from his chair shifts from here to here, that far. How does Bruce Lee does it? If you can see the plantar flexion here, see how he has channelized the power of the lower limb to the upper limb by practicing the transfer of energy from lower limb to upper limb with the transfer of through the kinetic chain. Then it does not come across as big a surprise. Yes, we cannot do it. We do not have such a nice coordination, but with practice, this is possible. Similarly, when you bowl, when you throw with baseball, or when you bowl a cricket ball, always the other leg goes up, and then the leg comes down, the hand goes up. Similar way to activate the kinetic chain. How is it relevant as a physiotherapist? Number one, you have a local global relationship. That means that if there is a problem in the calf muscle or foot, you can get a headache. Okay, this many people used to believe this happens. But then there is something also called as ripple effect. Ripple effect means what? You have a big, say, lake. You take a big stone and throw it at one point of the lake, one side of the lake. Theoretically, the ripples will go on the other side of the lake. But the amplitude of the wave will be maximum closer to the point where you have thrown the stone. So if I get a headache, I would expect my physiotherapist to investigate the head first. Yes, there can be a problem in the leg that may be contributing, at least theoretically, to my head problem. But because of this ripple effect, the problem of the leg that goes to the head will be lesser most often than the problem that is originating from the head. But still, there are local global relationships, definitely. For example, if you have flat foot, you have tibial torsion, you have problem in the hip. So W sitting people will have more chance of flat foot. So there, if you have something in the hip, look at the foot. Similarly, look at the length tension relationship. And then, because we talked about the kinetic chain, which is a whole body continuous structure, treat the person as a whole person. And whenever there is a problem, simply correcting the mechanical fault does not help. You need to integrate, you need to correct the kinetic chain. So for that, you need to give exercise, stabilization, and postural correction. And when I talk about stabilization, don't only think about abdomen and transversus abdominis and multifidus. Core is the buzzword today, or maybe core was the buzzword yesterday. Now, if you see the dance shows also, they will talk about cores in the TV. But when you think about stabilization, don't think about only lumbar stabilization. Also think about the scapular stabilization, cervical stabilization. The whole thing is the axis, as well as postural correction. And finally, we talked about the mechanical macrostructure, microstructure. Let us talk about the neural connection of the myofascia as well. The neural connection of the myofascia, let me see how much time I have consumed. It's already 7 o'clock. I'll finish it within 5 minutes. The neural connection of the myofascia means that there are 4 types of receptors. Apart from the exteroceptors, there are 4 types of mechanoreceptors in the myofascia, which is Pacinian corpuscle, Ruffini, Golgi tendon organ, and interstitial receptors. To understand it better or remember it better, let us start with Golgi G, Ruffini R, interstitial I, and Pacini P. Grip. You have a grip. And what are their functions? Pacinian corpuscles are stimulated by sudden changes in the pressure. So you can modulate it using high velocity thrust or vibration. Thrust techniques are so popular, no? Seems so alluring. I did a click and the patient became all right. And that happens because it kind of resets the receptors, But the problem is you want to try this, you want to do this, and you end up doing this. You would have read in the newspapers that in some barber shop, some patient, some client was manipulated upon, and next day the patient got paraplegia, died, this, that. So, but high velocity thrust gives good results, at least in the short term. Vibration also does the same thing. So, clinically, high velocity thrust, how it works? One of the ways by stimulation of the Pacini. Then the Golgi tendon organ. It, as you know, GTO is an inhibitory receptor, and it responds to the tension in the tendon, and it reduces the muscle tone. And using this, you can stretch and relax and reduce pain wonderfully in the muscle in a matter of say 3-4 repetitions. Unfortunately or fortunately, GTO does not respond to passive tension. GTO responds mostly to active tension, and that is why we use this. How? Using a hold relax. So a hold relax PNF in the neuro, or its counterpart in ortho, that is manual therapy, that is muscle energy technique, is where you can get fantastic result in a matter of say seconds, and you can improve the muscle length tension relationship or myofascial condition using GTO. One of the example is Mulligan's BLR. You increase the range of motion of SLR with a few minutes. Within a few minutes, the patient who was having say 60-degree range of motion will have a full 90 degree, will touch the toes. That is how powerful you can is GTO modulation. Then come to Ruffini. Ruffini detects deep pressure and clinically modulated by deep petrissage massage. It reduces the sympathetic tone. In other terms, it stimulates the parasympathetic tone, promotes relaxation. So if you want to relax, stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, reduce the sympathetic nervous system, stimulate the Ruffini endorphins. But where the actual real game happens is interstitial fiber. This is the most abundant type of receptor in the body. Clinically modulated by effleurage. What it does, it drives fluid between blood and interstitial tissue. That means it takes fluid from the blood, puts it to extracellular matrix, and then that means you are increasing the soup in the soupy noodle. You are improving the muscle play. No, so this is also stimulated by needles. Another way to stimulate the interstitial fibers, and that promotes movement, correction of movement, better muscle play. And then there are other neuronal pathways, including taping, exteroception, or other proprioception, spatial senses, autonomic and multisensory stimulation. Now you may ask, which one of them is the best? Actually, there is no specific way to say that which one is the best. You can use any of them or many of them to modulate the myofascia. So I have put one of Bachchan's famous this thing poem part of Madhushala is Rah pakad tu ek chala chal aa jayega Madhushala. That means any one of them you pick up, and then you kind of try to modulate the whole body. The whole myofascial system can be modulated with a single sensory pathway or multisensory pathway, multisensory stimulation using any of the myofascial receptors. And finally, I was talking about circulation. No? I want to show you how microcirculation happens. And this is a clip from Jean-Claude's video that is there in the YouTube. So a small clip, as you can see. As the muscle fibers contract, these muscle fibers pump the blood into the small capillaries. So that is why whenever there is stoppage of muscle contraction, you see there is a lot of problem. There is also pain, there is a lot of muscle spasm, and that is why restoring the motion is very important. And working on these myofascial receptors, working on the myofascia can restore the motion, and then the body takes care of itself. And this is all I wanted to share. I would welcome if there is any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhanjan. Thank you so much for the wonderful and elaborative presentation with all the basic points which we study in I guess the biomechanics, Cynthia Norkins, the properties of connective tissue. You started from there, the load deformation and the Young modulus, and all the basic structures of the extracellular, intracellular matrix, the other structures, the arrangement of the matrix, and then finally you came to the GTO and the Ruffini, all these structures. And a very beautiful presentation, how these things are working in the advanced techniques which we are using now. So the message is that we need to have a good base, that is the strong foundation, in order to make our techniques or skill strong. That was very much evident and loud in the whole presentation. It was very much informative. And now let us see if we have any kind of questions. And in meantime, I can just make you the co-host so that you can stop the share screen, or already you have stopped. You have
Yes,
stopped.
sir, I stopped it.
Okay. So there was a question from Abhijit Kalita. Sir, how deep can we modulate the myofascia?
Yes, Abhijit sir, very, very important question, sir. I'm sure you're asking it on behalf of your students. Uh, Depends upon what what mode are you taking. If we are talking about receptors, we can go as deep as the joint receptors, and also depends upon the area of the body. You know, if you want to modulate the periosteum, rich in receptors, and in the shin bone, you can reach the periosteum of the shin very easily. On the other hand, if you want to reach the back of the tibia, not very easily possible. Only thing you can do is you can reach with a needle. Okay, so depends upon the body areas. Also depends upon the kind of tool you use. Now there are schools of therapy where they even modulate the abdominal viscera. I am not trained in that, but if people are doing work and people are producing results, then you can go as deep as the abdominal viscera. Of course, depends upon the amount of size of the abdomen as well. On a lighter note, but depends upon the tool, sir, and depends upon the body structure. You can go as deep as possible. The receptors basically say for a hold relax of a deep muscle, also something like say iliopsoas or a say multifidus. I cannot touch it by hand, but I can give a hold relax in the multifidus, positioning the body and giving a resistance. On the other hand, if I want to reach mechanically, then a deeper superficial structure can be accessed through the skin. A deeper structure needs another kind of tool. One of the suggestions could be needed.
Okay. One more question from Pallavi Thakur. Which direction shall be preferred while performing myofascial technique? Proximal to distal or distal to proximal?
Okay.
Direction, yeah.
Direction of the. So when we are releasing a specific structure, you know, when we are thinking about proximal or distal, we are mostly thinking about the direction of the say uh, direction of the efflux or the fluid. When you are talking about the myofascial fibers, we are probably localizing our forces to a specific structure. So it does not really create so much of difference whether you are coming proximal to distal. When you are doing a focal area, more I would be more focused to working whether along the muscle fiber or transverse to the muscle fiber, and I will start working on along the muscle fibers first, and then once I get a little bit of yield, I will work transverse to the muscle fibers. Okay, when you're talking about a single muscle, however, when I'm talking about say when you're talking about the whole body, I will probably work more on the central part and then going to the distal part, but that may change depending from condition to condition. Okay, but primarily suppose I want to relax someone, I will probably work more on the paraspinal muscles, then I would go into the peripheral body part if you are trying to reduce the muscle tone of specific of a person.
Okay. One person is Nikunja. He wanted to ask something. He was requesting me to unmute. Nikunja, can you hear me? Nikunja. Nikunja, I have unmuted you. You can ask your question.
Hello,
Yes.
sir. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, you are
I
audible.
can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you for the session. So it was really informative. I have 2-3 questions. First one is you talked about water replenishment. So how much water do you suggest? Because it is maximum we suggest to the patient, but they say that yes, 2-3 liters of the water is what we intake. So more of it is not advisable actually. I don't know. So what do you think, sir?
Okay. So, Nikunja, my fun question to you is how much money do you think is enough to earn?
Yes, not cannot.
So the answer of this is depends upon your requirement. For me,
Okay.
for me 1 crore will be say beyond my imagination. On the other hand, if you go to say Ambani, 1 crore is nothing. No.
Yes, sir.
So what requirement, it depends upon the requirement. On a hot day, if I'm working out, I will need more water. On another person may need less water. It will also depend a lot on his or her kidney status. However, say as a thumb rule, 3 to 4 liters spaced throughout the day will be uh, for a general person would be a good choice.
Yes, sir. And sir, thank you, sir. And another question was, as you said, heating and pixotrophy. So these methods, it is better if it is internally heated than superficial heating. So you meant warming up the muscles.
Warm up. Yes.
So, sir, if the patient has come with some acute pain or something like that, so how can we warm up that particular muscle? It's quite difficult in pain.
Unless you can do a bit of isometrics, you'll have to use our age-old hot fermentation system. Moist, it
Yes,
works
sir.
wonderful.
And sir, yes, thank you, sir. And one more thing, that supplementation, you said that you don't prescribe tests. So do you prescribe the medicines?
Well, this is a whole new webinar, whole different webinar. But very quickly, supplements are not medicines. Okay.
Yeah.
The Indian medicine system is divided into schedules. If you take any prescription medication, behind that you'll see Schedule H drug should be sold by retail only under the prescription of registered medical practitioner. And then you have Schedule X drug, which are mostly narcotics. In that, not only prescription, what you need is the pharmacist has to take a Xerox copy of the prescription. The rest of the drugs, including the supplements, you do not need prescription for that. So you can always advise. It's not that I don't give I don't write or a physiotherapist does not have the right to ask for an investigation. As a physio, you ask the patients to go for X-ray all the time. You can also sometimes it becomes very important for the patient to know what is the sugar status of the patient. But I said I don't prescribe because the vitamin D and B12 costs here in the clinic that I am collaborating with, it costs about 2,000 to 3,000, I think, for vitamin B12 and D together. While knowing that the patient will have a say vitamin B12 deficiency going by the history or D. So yes, I do suggest the patient, if the patient is not coming from referral, that go for this supplements, as they are non-prescription drugs. I do not call them prescription, I give suggestions. Okay, and legally you can do that sitting in India. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think Nikunja, you got your questions answered. And Abhijit Kalita has one more question, not a question, a little bit of an confusion, like the word soft tissue release still confuse me with the actual meaning of the word release. What's your comment on it? Like, sir, I always wonder about the word soft tissue release, but still a bit
Yes,
confused with the actual meaning of the word release. What's your comment on it?
right. Abhijit sir, soft tissue release is a blanket term, and as you have correctly uh, pointed out, it is a vague term. So, couple of things. One is if there is a muscle spasm, there is increased tone of the muscle, and you want to probably bring down the tone in the muscle. In other areas, if there is, say, physical tightness or adhesion in the myofascial fibers, you may want to reduce that adhesion. That happens in the anterior inferior joint capsule, or that may happen in the immobilized body part. So it is on other hand, on one hand, unwanted and excessive tone in the myofascia. On the other hand, there is physical adhesion in the specific muscle fibers or myofascial fibers, is what is my understanding. Now some people bring here also another concept. They say that there is deposition of calcium lactate crystals. I don't know how far it is objectively diagnosable, but there is a concept that when there is deposition of calcium lactate crystals in the structures in the myofascia, they get stuck together, and manually you can release them, and you can produce mobility. But basically, as as a clinical physiotherapist, I believe a better movement of the muscle fibers is what we mean to produce when we talk about soft tissue release.
Yes, Ranjan. The next question is Sharvani Salkunkhe. Sir, would you suggest a myofascial release with hand or IASTM tool?
राह पकड़ तू एक चला चल आ जाएगा मधुशाला.
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever you are confident, whatever produces result for you. Myofascial modulation you can use with a whole relax. You can ask the patient to perform active movement. You can use a hand. You can use ISTM. You can use gua sha. Whatever you are proficient with. Okay, there is no right or wrong way. There are only effective way and ineffective way. If you can produce result, that is good enough.
Okay, another question she has asked, like, sir, what are the indications that release has happened from patient and therapist point of view?
Better movement.
Yes.
Better movement quality, basically.
And the same question again, I think we have already answered, that is according to the requirement. Karan Yangma wanted to know the amount of water intake for a normal individual as well as a sports person. Will it be same?
Yes.
Or an athlete has to take
requirement 3 to 4 liters is a good thumb rule. Unless the patient has kidney problem, then the physician will decide how much the water the patient wants to take.
Yeah, so I think we have come to the end of the question answer sessions, and that makes the in the concluding part of the today's session. So Subhanjan, thank you so much once again. And on behalf of Assam London University, Faculty of Paramedical Sciences, I like once again thank you for your valuable time. And I hope in Karnataka, Bangalore, things are going. I don't know what is the scenario of COVID. It is still like growing, or like what is the scenario? You are working from home now, online?
Sir, no, sir. I go to campus.
Yeah.
But the students don't come.
Yeah.
We are going to our this semester was finished.
Yes.
So Monday onward, we are going to start online classes for the next semester as well.
Yeah. Okay. So, same story for us.
Yeah, same everywhere, sir.
Yeah, same story for us, and we are also we are exams are going on for the final sem, and then the new session starts from August 17th. And I think now we are in a situation of, like to adjust samjhota karna padega COVID se, and we have to move on.
New normal, sir. That
New
is the term,
normal.
no buzzword.
Yeah, new normal. So thank you so much, Srivansan. I think a wonderful session, and I look forward again. Not in this e-medium, definitely at our campus with your workshop or something. When you plan up, do let me know. And till then, take care, stay healthy. Okay. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Abhijit sir and Abhijit Kalita sir. Also, thank you so much for all these informative queries. And yes, it's been some time since we have met, so we'll definitely want to meet you and meet every one of you. Abhijita as well. Would be great when we come down. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you for
bye-bye.
listening.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, sir.